Please subscribe to me.
This case takes place in Tajikistan in the year 2018. Austin and Lauren Geoghegan were two 29-year-old Americans from Washington, D.C. who had decided to step away from normal life for a while and see the world by bicycle. The two were young professionals with decent jobs. Friends and colleagues described them as thoughtful, curious, idealistic, and deeply kind people. They were a couple who wanted to see the world and meet people from all walks of life. Jay and Lauren had been friends for some time. However, their relationship eventually became romantic, and the two started dating. Before too long, they began a committed relationship. And one thing the couple absolutely loved to do together was cycling. In fact, it actually became central to their shared life. The two would go on various cycling journeys together, even going to different countries, including a trip once to Iceland. It would be in July of 2017 that the couple decided to leave their normal lives behind. They quit their jobs, packed their bicycles, and began a blog that they called Simple Cycling. Their plan was loose, but the basic idea was huge. Start in Africa, cross into Europe, ride into Central Asia, continue through Asia, and then end up in Australia. The two would document their travels on their blog. Their website describes a willingness to pedal wherever, in their own words, wherever the wind and world would take them. And they hoped that this blog would inspire and encourage other people to get on their bikes and see the world. Jay also wrote on their blog something along the lines of, "You read the papers and you're led to believe the world is a big, scary place, but the people we've met have been overwhelmingly kind." Now, long-distance cycling through countries is dangerous for a long list of reasons. Many people sometimes end up sleeping outside or in cheap rooms in unfamiliar, dangerous places. People find themselves relying on total strangers. You can be exposed to heat, rain, bad drivers, bad roads, wild animals, and sometimes political uncertainty. Like anything, there are risks, but also many positives. And the couple would write about the many positive experiences they had in these countries. The couple got through Africa and then cycled north before continuing into Europe. From there, they traveled into Central Asia, riding through Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan. By the summer of 2018, Jay and Lauren were in Tajikistan. Tajikistan is an extremely mountainous country. More than 9/10 of it is mountainous terrain, and the Pamir Mountains dominate the southeast. The Pamirs are sometimes called one of the world's great highland regions, stretching across Tajikistan and into neighboring parts of Afghanistan, China, and Kyrgyzstan. For cyclists, it's famous for being beautiful and difficult, but also lonely. There are few services in some sections, and the weather can be brutal. The elevation can also punish even the most experienced riders, but for many, that's all part of the fun. But the country did also have some underlying security concerns, including a small number of individuals who had become radicalized and had links to extremist groups abroad. During their travels, Jay and Lauren were not fully alone. They were part of a group of 7 foreign cyclists who had met while traveling and decided to ride together for part of their journeys. The group included Jay and Lauren, Dutch cyclists René Woke and Kim Postma, Swiss cyclists Marcus Hummel and Marie-Claire Diamond, and French cyclist Guillaume Cazabat. The morning of the 29th of July 2018 didn't begin with anything unusual. It was a Sunday, and the group of 7 cyclists set out just as they had done countless times before, packing their gear, checking their bikes, and rolling back onto the road. They were in the Dangara district, a part of southern Tajikistan. A part of the country, while remote by most people's standards, was familiar territory for travelers. At some point in the afternoon, the group was riding together along a road. The formation was loose, as it often is with cyclists, some slightly ahead and some trailing behind, but all within sight of each other. Then, all of a sudden, a car approached from behind. At first, there was nothing immediately alarming about it. Vehicles passed all the time. But this car didn't slow down. In fact, it accelerated towards them. In a matter of just seconds, the vehicle veered directly into the group, slamming into the cyclists, sending their bodies flying. The impact scattered them all across the road. For a brief moment, it may have looked like a horrifying accident, the kind of thing that can happen on long, exposed roads where cyclists and vehicles share a space. But this was no accident. The men inside the car stopped, got out, and moved towards the cyclists. Some of the riders were on the ground, disorientated. Others were trying to move, to get up and to understand what was happening. But what followed was sudden and chaotic. Armed with an array of weapons, such as knives and axes, the men began slaughtering the cyclists. There was no warning and no time to react in any meaningful way. Jay and Lauren were both stabbed multiple times in a horrifying frenzy of pure violence. Renee and Marcus too were viciously stabbed as they tried to get away. The French cyclist Guillaume, who had been riding slightly behind the main group, was only lightly injured. Kim, Renee's partner, survived and was treated after the attack. Marie-Claire also survived and was taken to hospital. At first, this was reported as a traffic accident, a car accidentally hitting a group of cyclists on a remote road. But it didn't take too long for the truth to come out. This was a terror attack. For the Tajikistan authorities, the timing of the attack was especially damaging. In the years leading up to 2018, the country had been trying to position itself as a destination for adventure tourism, with routes like the Pamir Highway attracting cyclists and overland travelers from all around the world. And now, the country was suddenly associated with a targeted attack on foreign visitors. It put pressure on officials to respond quickly. In the hours after the attack, the authorities began piecing together what little had been left behind. Descriptions from survivors, the path of the vehicle, fragments of evidence scattered across the road. It wasn't much, but it was enough to establish one thing quickly. The attackers hadn't disappeared without a trace. Then it turned out that the horrifying attack had been filmed, and the footage later began making the rounds on social media and regular media. By the next day, the focus had shifted away from the scene itself and onto the people responsible. Authorities were closing in, and a manhunt ensued. Authorities began working through the Danghara district and the surrounding areas. Whoever had done this were not a large organized network. It seemed to be a small group operating locally. Security forces then moved quickly, following as many leads as they could and checking out any known associates. And before too long, the net began to tighten. Within just days, they started finding them. One by one, the suspects were located. 4 of the men involved were killed during operations to detain them, after authorities said that they resisted arrest. The encounters were said to be brief and decisive, with little detailed information released publicly about exactly how each unfolded. The names of the terrorists who were killed are on screen now, because I quite literally can't pronounce them. However, one man was taken alive, and his name was Hussein Abdu Samadov. According to the authorities, he wasn't just another suspect. He was the ringleader, the one who had brought the group together and the one who had directed them to kill. As authorities began to examine his background and the connections between the men involved, the picture became clearer. This had not been impulsive. There had been intent, planning, and a reason behind it. Shortly after the attack, ISIS claimed responsibility through its affiliated media, and a video appeared showing 5 men pledging allegiance under a black flag. It was the 5 men responsible for the killings. But there was a slight complication. Tajikistan's government rejected the ISIS claim and instead blamed the banned Islamic Resistance Party of Tajikistan, known as IRPT. This is a bit strange, as it seems to be a political move by the Tajikistan government. So when we ask who did it, the clearest answer is a 5-man radicalized cell led by Hussein. But when we ask who was behind it, the answer becomes more contested. ISIS continued to claim it, and there is evidence to suggest that they were greatly inspired by this group. But as the case went on, authorities insisted on blaming the IRPT. So, who was Hussein? Hussein was a Tajik national. Public available details about his personal life are scarce, but reports indicate that he had spent some time working abroad, including in Russia, before returning to Tajikistan. Authorities said that he became influenced by extremist ideology, but beyond that, little has been independently confirmed about his background, upbringing, or personal history. His mother would later be interviewed. She said that she didn't believe he acted fully alone and that he had been influenced, drawn in by others. She blamed a local cleric, someone she said had changed him over time, pulling him away from his life and into something far more extreme. In the weeks before the attack, she claimed she had even tried to help authorities find him, and she was worried about his radicalization. The motive appears to have been terrorism. The attackers wanted to kill foreign tourists, create fear, and generate international attention. According to reporting based on investigators and people close to the case, the cyclists were not personally known to any of the attackers. They hadn't bumped into them in the weeks or days prior. They chose them because they were Western foreigners, and they were clearly vulnerable. ISIS then claimed to frame the victims as citizens of countries in a coalition against ISIS, and therefore they were enemy combatants. After the attack, several other people were detained on suspicion of involvement, support, or failure to report information. The investigation unfolded under heavy international attention. The US Embassy in Tajikistan confirmed the deaths of Jay and Lauren and expressed condolences to their families. Meanwhile, Hussein was charged with murder and terrorism. In November of 2018, Hussein was convicted of murder with extreme violence, along many other charges: religious extremism, recruiting for illegal militant activity, and attempted murder. He was sentenced to life in prison. Two other people who were involved received 16-year sentences, and a dozen others received shorter sentences for failing to report information related to the case. It's worth mentioning that Tajikistan does not currently use the death penalty, so life imprisonment was the maximum possible punishment. But the trial did not end every question. The Tajik government continued to reject the ISIS framing, and the RRTP continued to deny any involvement and called the accusations false. It became clear at the trials that many of the families of the accused had no idea that their loved ones had been radicalized. Back in the United States, Jay and Lauren's deaths were covered by major outlets. A friend of theirs said that their belief that most people are kind was not disproven by the fact that a small group of extremists murdered them. Jay and Lauren had said that many strangers across multiple countries had showed them nothing but kindness and hospitality. They were just tragically in the wrong place at the wrong time. Many people in the US mourned their tragic deaths. But some other people weren't too sympathetic. In the days that followed, a quote from Jay's blog began to circulate online widely. The quote was a reflection of their experiences traveling, where he wrote about how the world is often portrayed as dangerous, when in reality, most of the people they had met had been kind. The quote was shortened, reframed, and shared in a very different light. People online began to mock the couple, claiming that they had been naive, believing that the world was harmless, and that what happened to them was somehow a consequence of their own mindsets. Some comments went even further, claiming that they deserved it for even being there in the first place. Some YouTubers even made videos mocking the couple, making their deaths political, claiming that the couple deliberately traveled through ISIS areas to prove that there were good people there. But this just isn't true. The case of Jay and Lauren is beyond tragic. Their blog is still up and running to this day, and I do have to say, it's quite eerie to read their blog knowing what became of their trip and how their lives ended. Right now, you can visit the page and read this chilling post that was updated 7 years ago. It reads, "Hello, we're Lauren and Jay, and we're currently cycling around the world. To get updates straight to your inbox, just enter your email address below."